All right, hello and welcome. This is a build guide for the Shield Throw Paladin. Now, there's been a Shield Throw Paladin that's existed for a long time that uses Smite. It procs Smite through Shield Throw. This is a different beast altogether that has been basically brought into relevance with the new added throwing damage prefixes that have been added to 0.9. So we now have another competitor for, quote, the best shield throw build. The other one is still really good. The Smite one's still very good. But I wanted to make a build guide on this one, which has some advantages over it. For example, it is more consistent on clear because every hit does large damage instead of requiring a proc, which also means stunning is more consistent. So at least your CC is a bit more consistent on this build. They both perform very well. They're actually very, very close in performance from my own testing. But this one will be more for people who want to build an actual shield throw hit damage build and want something a little bit new, a little bit different from what the traditional, quote, meta for shield throw has been, and something that takes advantage of new fixes in 0.9. All right, so let's go over what's going on here. By the way, unfortunately, I don't have any gameplay footage because it is so new that if I would have done this on 0.8.5, it would have been very underwhelming looking. But trust me that this does perform very well. It's had extensive testing. It's a very good build. So you don't have to worry about it doing well. Just basically take the gameplay of any Smite build, Smite shield throw, and remove a lot of the Smite procs from it and just put a lot more crits in there. And that's effectively what you got. We push attack speed really high. We do pretty much most of the same things we do in that build, except we scale the throwing damage instead of the spell damage. All right, so how does this build work, basically? What does it do? As I mentioned, it is scaling attack damage. It's not caring about spells here. It's trying to get to full crit, and then it's just critting on every single hit. It's trying to attack as fast as possible. It takes advantage of Holy Aura, Citadel of Hope, and Volatile Reversal to get lots of damage, lots of defenses. It takes advantage of Throne of Ambition, which is really good for this build since it's both fire and this build can just pump armor. It's crazy how much armor this build can put out. Easily over 10k, probably closer to 15k if you really want to push it. So no problem there. Against hits, this build is super tanky. It wears a shield, so that even benefits it. Unfortunately, it can't wear Bastion of Honor, which did get a nerf this patch, but is still probably very good. But it needs to scale block chance for the damage on shield throw. So unfortunately, Bastion of Honor doesn't have a lot of block chance, like actual block chance that would convert. So we can't use that, but that's okay. Allows us to do some cool scaling with this that we otherwise don't do with shield. So it's also kind of an alternative option for shield wearers that are tired of using Bastion of Honor. All right, let's talk about the pros and cons of the build. It's very flashy visuals, lots of fire going on all over the place. There still are some smite procs, depending on how you build it so that you can get more attack speed. It's an absolutely excellent mono farmer. It uses shield rush to go really quickly, and then it clears out trash packs very, very quickly, which goes into the amazing clear and range it has. It can attack practically off screen. It has incredible scaling with gear and idols. It just loves gear. So if you love to build gear, this is going to be a good build for you. The cons for it are it does have heavy buff management. It does use Sigils of Hope. It does use Volatile Reversal. Holy Aura is pretty easy to use, but the other two can be kind of a pain, so be aware of that. It is vulnerable to dot damage just like pretty much every Sentinel build, so that's going to be a bit of an issue for it. But again, that's pretty much every Sentinel build. This one's just no different. The typical gear that you would use for endgame does not cap block, which means you can get some larger hits in. However, it is possible to cap block. We'll discuss that in the best in slot section. It does require mana sustain investment, though, to keep things going. Exactly how much mana sustain you'll need is going to vary depending on your play style, a number of other factors, and how much you actually want to manage it. But you will need to invest at least in some of that. All right, let's move on to the skills and the passives. So, of course, the number one skill is going to be shield throw. We are going to be pushing the hit damage on this, but first we need to do the no cooldown so that we can attack as fast as possible. By the way, you can attack much faster than this skill shows. So you can get this to look kind of like a machine gun. It's pretty sweet. We're going to take Molten Toss to scale our fire damage, which will be our tag. We're going to tag it into fire damage so that we'll be scaling completely fire damage thanks to adaptive throwing. We're going to take Spiked Plates and Rygar's Fury to get more damage for block chance. Then we're going to scale our block chance as high as we can. We're going to take Sharpened Rim to help us cap our crit chance. And we're going to take Armoring Aegis to give us a ton of armor scaling. This did get nerfed. It doesn't matter all that much. It's still very, very good. Sigils of Hope, we're going to take Empowering Sigils to get increased damage. We're going to take Decree of Flame to get base damage. Iron Sigils is now Endurance Threshold. This is actually a buff for this build, especially since we can already scale armor so well. Getting Endurance Threshold helps with dots and just our general DR, so I actually like this change from armor like it was before. Sign of the Guardian, we're going to take, of course, the block chance because we want to scale as fast as we can. We are going to take the chance to summon Sigil if we kill an enemy to help with our mana and just our general play style. And we're going to take Enduring Hope for that as well, along with Word of Alacrity, which will just help us cast this quicker. If you can fit it in, we'll end with that. Next up, we've got Smite. We're only going to use this if you want to take the extra cast speed and have the idols. So you get the extra 20% cast speed. It does also heal, so if you're standing close, you'll get good heals from it. And you can get cleanse from it, so it has some extra buffs. If you don't really care that much about 20% attack speed, or you don't have the idol, or you're struggling with mana, you can switch out to Shield Rush and take Rush Mastery for additional mana efficiency on that, so you can run your mana a little bit more easily. Next up is Volatile Reversal. This does a lot of work in this build. So we're going to take Harbinger of Dust for the increased enemy damage taken. This actually doubles up if you've got both Incipient Void Rift and if you've got Terminal Void, so we're definitely going to want that. We're going to want Warp Time and Catching Up to get Move Speed and Global Attack Speed. Unfortunately, we can't fit 3 of 3 here, but we can fit at least 2 of 3. We're going to we're going to increase the reversal time so that we have this up for longer, and then we're going to try to get as much CDR as we can while also still maintaining the mana, because we're also going to use this as a mana generator for when we have to cast our sigils. And last up is Holy Aura. This is a really, really good skill for this build. It gives us all kinds of elemental resistance. It gives us endurance. It gives us increased damage. It gives us attack speed. I'm going to have to switch these out just slightly here because they actually changed in the latest patch, but we'll take 2 of these out, and we'll see how it goes. I'll probably just put 2 in here, but otherwise it's all the same as it looks in here. And then we have Fire Pen, which is great for this build since we're full fire as well. All right, that's the skills. Let's talk about the passives. Passives are pretty standard with some exceptions, I guess, for a Paladin build. Armor Clad, we're always going to take that as a Sentinel because it gives us damage reduction, which is super hard to come by with this build. We got tons of resistances from Defiance, Holy Symbol, Abyssal Endurance, and Juggernaut. Use those as you need them. We're going to place 1 point into Gladiator, Steel Aegis, Honor, and Shield Wall to get the additional block chance that we're going to get. It's going to give us 5, 6, 7, 8% block chance just there. Reverence of Duality is an excellent Paladin. Node. You're definitely going to want to fill that up completely. And then any final points you can put into Prayer Aegis for health endurance threshold, Light of Rhea for damage and move speed, or Weapons Master for damage and armor, depending on your own personal needs. All right, let's talk about the gameplay. The build is pretty easy to run for the most part. Start off by casting 4 Sigils of Hope, and then use Volatile Reversal to recover your mana. Start hitting things with Shield Throw. Use Unspec Shield Rush or Lunge to move across the map. I recommend Shield Rush, but some people don't like it. You can switch to Lunge if you'd like. They both can work on spec. Cast Volatile Reversal and Holy Aura on top of enemies for their buffs and extra damage. You'll do a lot more damage, especially Volatile Reversal, and maintain your 4 Sigils of Hope at all times. You can also use Volatile Reversal to get back more mana if you need to, but if you don't need to, save it for damage. As far as mapping goes, rush to the objective with Unspec Shield Rush or Lunge. Proc the haste buff from Holy Aura's Expedite node for the additional movement speed. Be careful not to backtrack when using your Volatile Reversal, just because it's going to make you slower. And group mobs before using Volatile Reversal and Holy Aura to maximize their buffs, very similar to the standard rotation. As far as bossing goes, take advantage of all your defensive buffs and keep them active. Actively use your Holy Aura to double the effect of your buffs. Use Volatile Reversal to ramp up your damage and spam Shield Throw. And keep Unspec Shield Rush off of cooldown for emergency situations or telegraph boss attacks. Pretty simple. Mostly it's just maintain your Sigils of Hope. Use Volatile Reversal when it's ideal to do so. And the same thing for Holy Aura. Use Shield Rush to move, and then just spam Shield Throw all the rest of the time. Okay. Let's move on to gear, blessings, and idols. We're going pretty quick through this one. So we have stat goals, of course. We want capped resistances, we want capped critical strike avoidance, we want capped endurance, and we want 4,000 to 5,000 health. This can really scale health pretty high compared to a lot of other builds. 40 to 50% armor mitigation pre-buffs is very doable, and once you start to shield throw, you're going to just have an insane amount of damage reduction from armor mitigation. It's kind of crazy. 2,500 plus block effectiveness is the goal there. 75 to 100% block chance depending on whether or not you're in the BIS and using the BIS shield or not. It's very, very doable to get into the 80s though without it. Pretty high 80s even. So very, very doable there. 270% crit strike multis, great. 110 plus throwing damage. We want to stack throwing damage as much as we can, and 100+% throwing attack speed pre-buffs. That'll give us even more. Once we get our buffs going, it's going to be a very quick attacking skill. As far as gear progression goes, early on, of course, you're going to be looking to get all of your health and your resistances as you can. Throwing damage wherever you can fit it. Definitely get the throwing damage and minus throwing attack mana cost. I believe you need at least one of these to be at 0, so you have to have at least one. I don't think you need 2, but if you can get 2, great. It's got throwing attack damage on it as well. You're going to try to get as much crit strike as you can on your prefixes for your body armor and helmet to try to get to cap on that. You want to try to get an eagle wing as fast as possible for the base crit that it has. Throw on crit strike, chance, crit multi, chill, and slow as much as you can. Those are two very good suffixes by the way, ailments to have as much as possible. Your shield, get as much block chance, block effectiveness, reduce damage taken on block as you can on that one. And yeah, that pretty much covers just about try to get yourself a Solarum banner as far as the Sentinel relic to get the additional block chance on it. All right, next up, advanced gear. It's similar to the previous one. Switch out to a Oracle amulet if you can, because we just don't have a lot of dot reduction, and this is a really good place to get it. Outside of that, try to push up your gear as much as you can on these. Yeah, there. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention, get plus shield throw prefix on your helmet, +2 if you can. Of course, if you get exalted, even better. As far as the end game build, this is the more complete version. It's going to be very similar though. +3 to shield throw if you can. Try to get as much crit as you can on your prefixes for body armor and helmet, but don't sacrifice your health gains on these. Try to get as much as possible there. Prioritize exalted throwing attack speed on rings and on gloves. It's going to be great. You can get exalted throwing damage on amulet and relic if you can find it. And try to get exalted block chance on your shield. Don't underestimate block chance on rings and on gloves, because remember, not only are they increasing your damage reduction, they're also increasing your damage, because within shield throw we get 150% of the block chance of our block chance as more damage. So for every 1 block chance we get 1.5% more damage on those nodes. So very strong. Try to get some shred as well if you can. You're definitely going to want some, especially on your idols. We'll talk about that later. As far as BIS, things change quite a bit. Well, they don't change that much, but they change enough. So if you can get a legendary Face of the Mountain shield with exalted block chance and anything else on it, it has a pretty low legendary potential, so it's very doable. You can start to try to push to cap your block chance, because now you can scale endurance along with block chance to try and get there. So this is a really good way of trying to get even more damage reduction and sort of like get rid of all the spikes in damage. And it's also good for your damage, because again, you get 150% of your block chance as more damage. So this is definitely something worth trying to go for as a BIS or a very late end game item. It will make your build much stronger if you can manage it. You can also manage to get a nice Lyrical's Claws with at least throwing attack speed, no less than throwing attack speed to run this, but if you get at least that on it, and you can manage to get the other stats that you need on the gloves elsewhere, this is also a very big damage improvement. Like I think it's about 30 or 40% increased damage. The reason we don't run it earlier is because the other stats are really important. If you don't have the throwing attack speed, it's not really much of a gain at all. In fact, that your ailment application rate goes down, so it's probably not an improvement at all. It's certainly not better for defense. So this is definitely a BIS item, but if you can get it, it's pretty awesome. All right, let's move on to blessings. So as always, normal blessings don't really matter. There's a list here if you happen to run across them to pick them up, but do not farm normal blessings. Move to empowered, because you're going to replace those anyway. We're going to start with Grand Wrath of Rayag. This is our throwing damage leached as health. We're really going to need this to maintain our sustain. We definitely want this on our build as soon as possible. As far as critical strike avoidance, we're going to go pick up the Grand Survival of Might, and then we're going to just need one more crit avoidance suffix to cap. It used to be that we could use a body armor or helmet to cap. That is no longer the case. They have changed those implicits, so now we do need a suffix. Block effectiveness, we're going to want to pick up Grand Bones of Eternity next. This is a huge damage reduction improvement for us. We definitely want it as soon as we can get it after we've got the first two done. Grand Breath of Cinders is a very large DPS boost for us for the Shred Fire. We attack very quickly. We actually hit twice per attack due to taking the spell Lava Burst in shield throw, so we can apply this very, very quickly and get it up to cap stacks. There's only 10 now. We'll finish up with a Grand Crash of Waves, which will help our CC tremendously. We will stun most trashed enemies pretty much permanently if we have this. All right, next up in Powered Drop Rate Blessings, we're looking for a Grand Mark of Agony to try to get more Adorned Rhea Idols. We'll talk about those in a minute. Once you have, you really only need a chance to cast Smite when you hit with throwing attacks in this. Once you have that, you can switch over to Grand Sight of the Outcast. It should be Grand. I'll switch that to get the rest of your idols, which are going to be the large idols. Grand Bindings of Sanctuary is good to try to push your shield up and get more of those, of course, and then you can also push for more amulets if you already are happy with your shield. With Grand Vision of the Aurora, Grand Scars of Blood helps us try to find those eagle axes that are actually good. And then Grand Memory of Masters and Grand Hope of the Beginning are not super necessary, but if you're trying to get prefix farming, you can pick it up or you can skip it, either way. As far as idols go, Throne of Ambition is awesome in this build. The more damage on it is great, the more armor is great. This build might take advantage of it more than any other build in the game, especially with its armor stacking. We're going to want one Adorned Rhea Idol of the Bulwark. Well, one Keen Adorned Rhea Idol. If you can get of the Bulwark, even better. The plus 9% chance to cast Smite on hit, if we can get that capped up, is awesome for applying that 20% attack speed if you're going with Smite, which I think most people will, because attack speed's awesome and getting some healing is nice too. And yeah, the block effectiveness is great on this. Try to get those as high as you can on it. As far as your large ones, we're going with Throwing Crit Multi, Chance to Shred Armor on Fire Hit. Those are both amazing stats for this build. The rest of stuff, we're looking at increased health and a resistance to cap, whatever you can get. Lightning is arguably the most efficient here, but it really depends on your gear. Just cap whatever you can here. And stun chance and whatever resistance you need here is also really good. If you happen to need a stat on the other 1x1, you can run the other 1x1 with like armor or something, but typically if you can get the stun chance with a resistance here, it's going to be best. All right, that's idols. Let's move on to build scaling and endgame. All right, so as far as your damage scaling, we're of course scaling the crap out of shield throw here. Throwing attack speed's amazing, one of the most important stats that we will look for in the entire game. Flat throwing damage is a close second. Strength is really good because it also increases our armor along with our damage. Crit strike chance, we're going to want a crit cap. That's the goal, is a crit cap. Try to get there as fast as possible. You're going to need an eagle wing and a sharpened rim and the sharpened rim node in shield throw to do it. Crit multi is also an amazing stat. We're going to try to get as much as we can. Idols are a great place to get some. Sigils of Hope also gives us some really good stats. I actually have to change this here. It's not supposed to be Javelin in there. I'll get that fixed. Increased damage, if anywhere you can get it, is great. We're looking at fire damage, but honestly, you're not going to need it from your gear. It's going to come in spades and the passive tree and through buffs and through strength. Fall's Reversal gives us a ton of damage through the increased damage taken. Fire Pen is really good as well. The Conviction passive, already provides us a lot of that, so we don't really need to get much of any on our gear. Grand Breath of Cinders is going to be really important for this build with the Fire Shred, so we definitely want to take care of that as soon as we can once we get our defensive blessings out of the way, and it's going to be about a little bit less than 20% more damage on the bosses and a little less than 50% more damage on the other enemies, just because we already have penetration. Block chance is an amazing stat for damage for this build. This might be the only build that's an amazing stat for, because it gives us that 1.5% more damage per block chance. On to defense. We already talked about Armor Clad and how good that is in the passive tree. Block chance, of course, is huge. If you can get it capped, even better, but you don't need it capped. It's still going to be really valuable. Block effectiveness makes block chance every time you block more effective, so we definitely want that. It makes it you take less damage. That's what effective means. So we get as much of this as we can as well. We can get some on the idols. We can get Grand Bones of Eternity, and if we can get it on our shield. Endurance is great, especially because it's one of the few defenses we have against dots. So we want to cap that, especially now that Iron Sigils has changed over to endurance from armor. Endurance threshold, actually. Strength is going to give us more armor. It's great. Armor mitigation. We have a ton of ways of using armor to our advantage. Shield throws, armoring ages alone is going to give us a massive amount of armor, and then Throne of Ambition is only going to help it. Health is something we can stack a lot of in this build. We can get over 4,000 health, so stack it as far as you can. And then we're going to get our Leech from Grand Wrath of Rhea. Before you have that, though, you can run Avarice, Bleeding Heart, or Prism Wraps to get your health leech. Oracle Amulet helps with our dot protection, so we're going to want that when we can get it. Chill and Slow are huge. We got to have these. These are really important. Get them on your axe if you can. And Frailty is big for every build. Anything that hits at all is going to want Frailty, and this is no different. And of course, a Cleanse is also really good. As far as endgame activities go, it's very, very good in the Monolith of Fate. It's fast, it clears really quickly, it does fine on single target. There's not really any weakness this has except for the typical Sentinels and Dots thing, but that's not that big of an issue. Dungeons, it's pretty good at it. As long as you watch out for dots, it'll be very tanky against hits, so it can do all of the bosses. You might need to use Rebuke at times, though, to get the most out of it, especially with something like Soulfire Bastion. But it can definitely do the content for dungeons without too much trouble compared to other builds. Arena, it is definitely good for arena. It has good range, it has good tankiness. It is not one of the top arena builds, but it will do well, and it doesn't require amazing gear to do it. So if you want to be competitive in arena, you can run this build and you can be competitive. All right, that covers everything. Do remember that at the very end of this, we do have loot filters, which are fully updated and ready to go. So you can just run it right out of the box with one of our loot filters, and you don't have to worry about that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoy this build. It's a nice new fresh build for 0.9. I hope you enjoy your time in Last Epoch, and I will see you all again real soon.